Welcome back to the Storyteller Series. If this is your first time watching an episode in this series, I would encourage you to go back and watch the previous 2 episodes so that you can catch up. I've finished gluing up all the braces, so at this point we're ready to start voicing the soundboard. Now I realize that I'm missing that transverse brace up top, and that is on purpose. What I found is that when I'm carving this upper portion of the X brace, that transverse brace tends to get in the way when I'm using something like a block plane or a little hand plane. So in order to prevent that from getting dinged up, we'll just glue that on later. Now we're going to be voicing this soundboard a little differently than I normally would. That's because I'm going to work to a set of measurements. I have a luthier friend that was able to capture the brace heights and scallop points of an actual 1937 D28. So we're going to work on replicating those measurements and shaping the braces as close as possible to those original specs. Other parts of the body of the guitar are mainly in support of the soundboard, that reflecting the sound that it produces and providing the overall resonance of the guitar. Those parts are going to be slightly different than the vintage specs, hopefully enhancements to that. But the predominant sound that we're after is going to be coming from the soundboard. Before we get started with the voicing process, let's go ahead and grab a sound sample of what this sounds like before we start shaping the braces. That's not going to mean a whole lot right now, but hopefully that'll make for a good comparison later on. At this point, it's just carving and shaping. I've got the soundboard secured down to the radius dish with a couple of locator pins just to make sure things don't move around. But I'm just going to throw on some tunes here in the shop and get after it. But hey, if you have any questions as I'm working through this process, go ahead and throw those in the comments and I will address those just as soon as we're done. I almost forgot one important part. I need to put a cap over this X brace. You'll see this in the original vintage Martins where they've used a piece of fabric to put over that as a form of a cap. They slather it in glue and put over that. We're not going to do that. We're going to use an actual wood cap that we'll put on top of that lap joint just to secure all that together. So let's do that first. This all looks really good. Everything is dimensioned down to the specifications sheet that I have for a authentic 37D28. I sanded all this roughly with 120 grit sandpaper. This all feels good, but I'll probably come back in with some 220 and just make this look really nice so that it's ready to go. But for right now, I want to go ahead then and finish this off with that transverse brace. So we're going to do that next. Grab the template real quick. Now this one is going to be just a little bit different sized than the typical brace that I would use. I like to do kind of like an inverted transverse brace where it gets taller at the sides and a little smaller in the center section, whereas the traditional version of that is for it to be taller in the middle and then scalloped down by the edges. But we're going to try and keep this in alignment with the original. So with this, you can kind of see there's a pretty good gap there. That's how wide my typical brace is. So this is quite a bit more narrow, but we're just going to put it towards the bottom of my channel here so that my template will still work for alignment when we go to mark the sides for where these braces are going to cut into the sides. All right, so we'll go ahead and mark the cutoff location. Let's radius sand the bottom of that. Or do I? It's been kind of a debate on some of my builds, a debate with myself. The area up top where the fingerboard extension comes over the body, you really need that to be more flat. I've had better luck putting a radius in up there and making all of the geometry meet up better. I don't know, I feel like it all kind of forms together better than having it flat. I have done one flat before, but I didn't necessarily like the way that turned out. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and radius this up here as well. Yeah, one more reason I'm gonna do that is because when I radius, one of the things that is important is to radius the sides of the guitar too. And so when I do the radiusing of the sides, I put that in the radius machine, which is going to put the same radius around the entire top. So if you want to leave this flat up here, you can do that, but then you cannot do the radiusing of the sides up here. You kind of have to stop. And with the machine that I've got, that's a lot more difficult. If you're doing it by hand, it's certainly a lot more feasible, and that's the way that I've done it before. So I am going to go ahead and do the radiusing, but I just wanted to make that one other point of why I'm going to go ahead and radius this transverse brace too. Okay. Yep, that's exactly right. Okay, just need to glue that down. Now at this point, I wouldn't blame you if you were confused and were wondering, well, Tim, why are you using a go-bar deck when I just saw you use a vacuum press before? And the answer is, it depends. It just depends on the brace that I'm doing. This one's a little taller, and so I don't really like using the vacuum press because I feel like it has a tendency to want to push it on its side. So I just feel better about doing it here in the Go Bar deck. In general, I like using the vacuum press for all of it, or just for gluing in general, but I just have a few of these that I like doing it this way. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll put it in the Go Bar deck just long enough for the glue to gummy up a little bit so that I can take it out and I'll clean up the glue, and then I'll go stick it in the vacuum press, just because it kind of stabilizes and it sits enough so it's not going to move before I put it into the vacuum press. So it depends, but I go back and forth on these. Okay, this is the point where the glue is just set a little bit. It's just kind of gummy. And what I like to do is I keep popsicle sticks everywhere around here. They are the handiest tools, and I just sand an edge in there so that it's sharp on one side. I even got a little piece of sandpaper on this side for other things. And then you can just come right along in here and kind of use that to scrape that glue right back up and clean up that joint. When it's all the way set, we'll come back and clean it some more, but this just gets the main stuff out of there so that you don't have so much to work on once it's all said and done. You do want to be careful, since you got a point on the end of this. This wood is soft, so you don't want to dig down in, otherwise you will leave a permanent mark. But if you ride on that bottom edge, you won't leave an indentation in there. And once you've got the main part of the glue taken care of, you can come back in. I just wet a paper towel, and you can come back in and clean that up a little bit more. And what you can do is take the little tool that you made out of your popsicle stick and use that to kind of push that right into the edge so that you can get the rest of that glue out of the joint and make a nice glue edge. And when you're all done, you should have a nice clean edge. Okay, we'll put the template back on, put it back in the Go Bar deck for one last time to let all of the glue joints set up for their final time, and then it'll be good. I'm just going to get this down to its final height, put 2 scallops in each end, and then the transverse brace will be done. So very close. Just got to do a couple of supports here around the sound hole, and we're done. I'm telling you, popsicle sticks, best tool in the shop. Well, I think that this is about done. This is as close as I know how to get the soundboard to that original vintage 1937 D28. Now, granted, I am working off of some drawings, as much information as I could scour on the internet, bracement placing, all of that, but it's really hard to find like visuals on the inside of that vintage series. So if you have information on that and you could give me some feedback on whether I got anywhere close on that, I certainly would like to know. But I'm hopeful with trying to get this close, working with some of the measurements, which I know to be good, and trying to get it in the range in terms of the scalloping and the placement, that with the torrefied soundboard, the torrefied braces, that we're gonna get real close to reproducing that vintage tone that we're after. So I'm excited to hear what this is gonna sound like when we get it all finished. There is one more thing that we were gonna do. Let's go ahead and get that second sound sample now that we got everything carved, so that we have something to compare against the uncarved braces. That is it for this episode. Man, it is amazing how much work is involved just carving braces. But hey, stay tuned. That next episode, we're gonna tackle the back and put braces on there and do that carving all over again. But until then, I'll catch y'all next time.